having our students in Prince Georges County going to Virginia because they continue to support the arts there. I've had
Any further questions? Thank you, Ms. Wallenberger. Mr. Roland Lee.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the delegation. My name is Roland Lee. I am Chief Counsel with the International Chamber of Asian American Business Executives, and as well as Chief Counsel for the National Philippine Cultural Foundation. I am excited about this bill because what it does, it's not asking for the county, it's not asking the state or the federal government for money. It's allowing us to support ourselves so that we can support the community, and that's the bottom line. Our mission statement and our goals can be summarized in just a few, very few words. It is to promote the arts and preserve the culture. Not just one culture, but many diverse cultures here in Prince Georges County, and that's exactly what we need. We have, through the graciousness of the state and the county over the years, we were able to build this gorgeous building to tie the community together, to bring people to share each other's cultures. By allowing us to help have these poker events will allow us to support ourselves. It'll have a trickle-down effect because, in effect, our mission is to give some of those funds to the dancing studios, to the visual arts, to the performing arts. That will help us immensely. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Mr. Lee? Seeing there are none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Matthew Thomas.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman, distinguished delegation. My name is Matthew Thomas. I wear a number of hats, some at the local level, some even at the state level. But I come to you today in addition to supporting this legislation that will help us support the arts, but also as a retired firefighter. So I certainly have a view of the impact of the cutting of funds for cultural arts and volunteer fire companies. We certainly know that at the state level, the budget for cultural activities has been cut. We certainly understand the necessity to make these cuts, but we certainly have to look at creative ways in which we can subsidize things that are very meaningful to our communities. And certainly the cultural arts organizations, which have a great impact on our families, our children, and certainly the volunteer fire companies who do a magnificent job of providing fire services. And certainly there are needs, especially when it comes to the fire services. A lot of the things that they do with respect to some of these activities is buy equipment, provide funds for training. But certainly when you combine that with the need for us to continue to support the cultural arts in our community, we know that there are critical needs for families. We know that there are critical needs to keep our young people and others engaged in the arts. The arts have always long been the foundation of any civilized culture. And I say to you from the standpoint of what we have done here in this county, we need to look at any avenue in order to provide funding sources that can sustain these very important entities. We look at the fact that in Prince Georges County we have cultural organizations such as the Prince Georges Arts Council, Greenbelt Arts Center, Brentwood Art Exchange, the Gateway Arts Center along Rhode Island Avenue, and cultural centers. So I implore you to look at the necessity to allow an entity that can provide funding for this most valuable resource, being cultural activities and our very important volunteer fire companies. So in addition to that, there are 23 other counties in this state that allow charitable poker games. So again, from the standpoint of being in line with other jurisdictions, it is very important that we look at this valuable resource. I thank you.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very brief. I just want to raise this, and certainly I know that we'll have this bill before us in Annapolis in work session. I serve on the Maryland State Arts Council, and we just had Arts Day last week in Annapolis. I'd be very interested in learning of the organizations that presented today and those that you spoke of, you know, what the success has been in terms of applying for the State Arts Council funds and partnership with other arts organizations. So, but we can take that up at another time.
Yes, and we can certainly help facilitate that.
Thank you.
Delegate Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Thomas, I heard you mention that we used to offer these types of events in Prince Georges County years ago. What happened? You know?
Well, let me just say this. It may be that in some area of the county or even the state, these activities still go on. But certainly to the extent that we need to kind of uplift what we're doing, you know, make it a legitimate effort to raise funds. I think we need to kind of step it up and look at these sources of raising needed revenue for these kinds of activities.
So, I mean, you don't know what happened, or we did used to have it, but we no longer do have it?
Well, I don't think we have it at the level now that I think is necessary to sustain the cultural arts and, of course, activities for the volunteer fire companies.
And the second question, and I was going to ask it to the lady that had the dance studio. One of my concerns is, what message are we sending? We're taking care of children like the dance, we're taking care of arts, subsidized by gaming and bingo nights or poker nights. I mean, is that the message that we really want to send to the kids? You feel comfortable with that?
Well, Delegates, let me just say this. I feel comfortable with finding the appropriate revenue to subsidize meaningful activities in the county. Now, certainly we can debate all day long about where the revenue comes from, and certainly if this was a revenue stream that was plucked out of the sky and we've never ever engaged in it, you know, that's one thing. And I think there's a way for us to look at gaining revenue from this particular entity and also keep it as wholesome as possible. Because again, I think from my own standpoint, and I speak only for me, you know, what I've raised my children to understand is that there are things that happen in life and there are things that we need, and they come from a variety of sources. So I think we as parents and we as responsible citizens, I think we can make the correlation between needed revenue and the other issues. Because again, you know, from my standpoint, myself as a parent, I am the ultimate responsible individual, you know, to instruct my kids on what is important and what is not.
May I ask one question? But I guess my follow-up would be, if you say needed revenue in terms of need, so public safety obviously is a need. We have to prioritize public safety, which would be the volunteer fire department, be more of a need than, let's say, you know, arts programs.
Well, I don't think there's a need to really draw a correlation because certainly volunteer fire companies are not subsidized necessarily by public dollars. A lot of what they do is fundraising from a variety of sources, bingo, pancake breakfasts, oyster and beef roast, that kind of thing. So, you know, you have to draw a correlation between the volunteer fire company system and the paid fire company system. And so, as a nonprofit, volunteer companies have to be creative in finding revenue sources. And so this is one thing that they've done traditionally over the years, is had bingo and poker nights. So again, we're not going to a place that we have not gone before. We just need to look at how we can make it work constructively for Prince Georges County as it's working right now in 23 other counties around the state.
I think that they probably do some more research on why we no longer have it. I think that's one.
We can certainly assist with that, but I certainly encourage all of you to look at the legislation and look at the sense that it basically makes in times that we need to be able to find revenue sources. And again, if there's anything that can support the fulfillment, the education, and the needs of our children, we need to look at that, and we need to look at it honestly, and say to the kids, say to the volunteer fire companies, we need revenues. If you turn this situation down, where are we going to go next? Because it's one thing to say I'm in opposition, but you certainly need to do that with another choice. And as we all know, our revenue stream choices are limited at this particular time. Thank you.
Any further questions? If I may, just somewhat in connection to your question, Delegate Walker, as a few of the witnesses have stated, there is apprehension when it comes to this issue. I will say, though, that as we all know, the fiscal times are very difficult, and it's hard to find sources of revenue and sponsors and such to sustain such organizations, especially for our children. So if there's anything we can do in that respect, then that's what we will do, to work together to make sure that this comes to fruition.
That's a good point. Can I ask a question, maybe a response? Is there a designated percentage that will go to the children, I mean, to these groups that have to, you know, when we have annual reports from them, will be reporting part of their revenue?
That is something that we're going to have to work in the legislation to get.
Yeah. And let me add, I believe the entities that engage in this, their funding is pretty much funding that stays in-house. If it's a volunteer fire company, if it's a cultural center, you know, I think they're kind of responsible for what they basically do. So with respect to work, but we'll work with you on that.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Thank
Any
you.
further questions from the delegation? Seeing that there are none, that will conclude the testimony on PG 303-11, and that concludes the report on law enforcement in the City of Twin Falls. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did notice the presence of former delegate David Valderama in the back. We want to say good afternoon to you, Delegate Valderama.